Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September 14th meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board. We have at least one member on Zoom. I suspect we may have some more before this is over.
Paul just texted he's going to be a couple minutes late.
Paul's running a couple of minutes late, so we'll do some other things before we get into the meat. First up is, let me remind you all, obviously we are being recorded. The camera's kind of a giveaway. First up, we traditionally take public comment, general public comment. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on any general topics before we get underway with the agenda items? Anybody here? Seeing none, all right, I guess we go to our first order of business, which will be 255 Princeton. Let me make one other comment here, though. We've had one of the agenda items asked for a continuance. That's later on. I think it's the Route 129.
270 Billerica.
270 Billerica. So they have asked for a continuance, so they'll probably not be in play tonight. All right, 255 Princeton. Hi.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Can everybody hear me? For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Farrell & Robbins. I'm here tonight for our 255 Princeton Street, a continuation. I just wanted to give the board a little bit of an update. Since the last meeting, we've gone back and forth a few times with Beta. I'm sure you've seen the comments in your packet. I think Beta is online tonight, and also our engineer from Allen & Major is also online tonight. Really, we have a clean final letter. He had some suggested conditions. I think the only one that was left open for a board discussion was regarding earth removal and trucking. But if you look at the draft condition, the draft decision, which I don't expect that any of you have read since it didn't come out until late this afternoon, the very last condition that I added in was that a construction sequencing, phasing, and trucking plan would be reviewed prior to commencement of construction. So that trucking will be addressed prior to commencement of construction. We think it's important as well. We've received updated comments from DPW, but as you saw, there was only a few. They cite to the Beta comments. They say SW in the front of them. We've agreed to all of those. When you get a chance to go through that full draft decision, you'll see that we've agreed to all of those conditions. So we have no concerns whatsoever with DPW's updated comments. Finally, we received landscaping comments from Nan. Thanks, Nan. I know you're here digitally. We can work through all of those comments. We didn't see any that were of any concern whatsoever. Her final comment was that a final plan come back as a condition of approval, just addressing her concerns. We have no issue with a friendly amendment to the decision. It's not in the version that you have in front of you, but we are happy with a friendly amendment to that, that we come back before the board with a landscaping plan. We'll have to come back with the phasing plans in any case, so it'll be nice to see the landscaping as part of that. Like I said, we do have a draft decision circulating, but again, I don't have expectations that the board would have feedback. I'm not looking for the board to go through that line by line. I will tell you that Evan, myself, and Mr. Haverty, Attorney Haverty, have been working through that decision. So I think it's in very good form. There's nothing surprising in there, no additional conditions. I tried to make sure that the conditions that the board had wanted are in there, and Evan did as well. We tried to make sure that every condition that had been highlighted in a board or town comment letter had been addressed. So I think you'll see that it's your standard format, pretty straightforward for a project of this size. I think it's a pretty succinct decision. With that, I mean, really, I think this evening what we would be looking for is that the board close the public hearing and vote to issue the decision. And then at the next meeting on the 28th, we'll have a couple more weeks to iron out the details, and the board can actually execute the decision at the 28th. But obviously, before you close the public hearing, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. All of our consultants are here, or one way or another, and Mark Baranski from Trammell Crow Residential is also here with me tonight. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Great. Well, thank you very, thank you very much, and may surprise you, I actually did read it. I had to hide under my desk at work, but I managed to read it. And I saw some other comments as well. But I think your suggestion is a good one, that we close the public hearing tonight, that we vote on this, and then, as is our custom with complex decisions, we'll then, wordsmith the draft at our next meeting.
So as I mentioned just before you close, your peer review consultant, Phil, is on the line.
Yep, and why don't we have him, there's, I guess, one item
Sure.
that
Yeah, just,
probably worth some discussion. Take it away.
Phil, you're up.
All right, good evening. Phil Powers with Beta Group. We've been reviewing this for a little while now. So there are actually two items. One is the test pit for the infiltration basin that I think we had a discussion last night with the Conservation Commission, and I think they're gonna handle that. The second item was it kind of almost slipped through the cracks that the project is going to require 51,000 cubic yards of material to be trucked off the site. So I just wanted to make sure that the town was protected relative to any trucking damage, et cetera. So those are just the two highlights. And as I spoke with Evan earlier today, he said he included all the recommended conditions. So I don't need to reiterate those. But yeah, so looks in pretty good shape.
Great, thank you. Now, that was 5,100 or 51,000 cubic yards? What
It
was
said 51K.
51K, that's a lot of dirt. Okay, and I understand that that's been put into the draft as a condition, that will be handled.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just
Yes.
to his first issue, the Conservation Commission wanted some testing done. We had drafted it as part of your decision that testing would be done prior to building permits. Conservation wants it done prior to the issuance of their NOI, which is fine. Your decision is still valid. It'll be done way in advance now of building permits, so it is part of your decision, and thanks to the Conservation Commission, it'll be done well in advance.
Very good. Okay, so that looks like that's covered. Let's see, let me run it once around the board, and then I will open it up for what I think may be our final round of public comment. Would you like to start?
I have no comments or questions.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I'm good. Nancy, you out there?
Yeah, I'm out here. Yeah, I submitted in comments on landscaping materials today. I think they're issues that can be readily addressed, but we do need to see a revised landscape plan before all the sign-offs are done. But I don't think that should hold up voting on this.
Okay, sounds good. Do we have anybody else? Is Paul?
He won't be here till like 7:05, he said.
He won't be here till 7? Okay. I think he's pretty well versed on this. And no Erica?
Erica is not online tonight.
Okay. Well, this is still a public hearing, and although I hope we close it tonight, we'll take any final public comment, if there is any. New topics only, please. Did anybody wish to speak? Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian Latina, Precinct 9 Town Meeting Rep, 15 Jesse Road here in Chelmsford. I was just kind of curious, the board holds the town meeting reps to a 48-hour notice where you can't read a letter or document if we were to submit it, say, yesterday. However, I just heard that maybe this current letter was passed to you, perhaps by email, and not to the public.
Oh, this was not a letter. This was the draft that had already been prepared and has been circulating. This is a draft decision. It's not evidence
So
for the
draft,
board.
draft decision that the town, town meeting reps, residents, taxpayers have not had an opportunity to look at or see. Yet the proponent is suggesting that you close the public meeting. I would suggest that if a town meeting rep can't write a letter the day of a meeting during COVID that you can read, and you have to read it afterwards, that you should keep the public hearing open for one more pass, because that information is not available to the public. I know you read it. However, we need to hold the proponents to the
light
same
went away.
standard. Yeah, I did that. To the same standard as town meeting reps or residents who might wish to speak on the topic of the letter that none of us have seen.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Well, thanks for the commentary. I will repeat that the draft decision does not represent testimony before the board. It represents the board's machinations in trying to firm up the details of a decision. But your point's well taken. Is there anybody
Michael.
else who would like to speak?
Michael?
Yep.
Nancy? It might be useful to point out that the letter in question, one, is not a letter, and two, it's an output of this process, not an input to the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, good evening. I'm John H. Byron Jr., 117 Proctor Road, South Chelmsford, a precinct 11 rep. 51K yards. If you have a 40-yard trailer, that's going to be over 1,112 truckloads. That's a lot.
Yes, it is.
That's a lot. And what's that going to do with the roads?
Well, okay. Good point, and that's part of the reason that that's going to be addressed in the decision
Just
planning for that.
seemed like a lot of hauling.
Yeah, it's a lot of dirt.
It's almost like the asphalt, they're gonna be running 24 hours a day for whatever.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for the comment.
Is that right? 1,100 truckloads?
I don't know, I'd have to work it out. It's probably a lot, but remember, it's probably spread over several years. So. Very good. I don't see anybody else standing up. I would then, if anybody on the board wants to make an immediate comment, otherwise I'd take a motion.
I was just, Brian's comment about not being able to see
Yeah.
the document, I think it's a valid comment, and I was wondering, I'm all for like wrapping this up, and I get it, and I want to move forward. If we just kept it open for one more meeting, make it a quick one.
Well, I see the point, but again, I think Nancy put it very well. That is not an input to the board, that is an output from the board. It's
All the more,
different.
all the more reason, right? Like, it covers us too, right? If they see something that maybe we made a mistake or something,
would
cover
hope,
us.
yeah.
Like, I have no problem keeping it open and making it a short meeting.
What is the downside to keeping it open if we did keep it open for?
We could.
Well,
but
will it slow
Is it
down?
going, the question is it going to give us any additional input that will be useful for the planning board to make its decision? And I think the answer is it's unlikely, but not
Well-
impossible.
To his point,
Okay.
not that it's going to give us any information, but it's also maybe giving them information, but
Yeah.
And a more
Is there-
transparency.
Well, we can certainly leave it open if that's the will of the board.
if it's not going to affect the process,
How much will it put them
Just to
back?
refresh the board's memory,
Huh?
just to refresh the board's memory, this is your third or fourth hearing on this.
Yeah.
At your last meeting in which this item was on the agenda, the board essentially tasked staff with providing a draft decision for this meeting.
so we've had plenty of time on it.
Not only have you had plenty of time, but the public has had plenty of
I
time.
haven't read the draft decision. I got it, like...
Right. So I think what we're talking about this evening is not necessarily voting the decision.
Right, but if we're not going to vote on it, then why don't we take a little more time so we can actually review it?
I think that's what we were
Yeah,
discussing.
we're going to do that.
But not close the
Why,
public.
why do we need to close the public hearing if we're going to...
Well, that's for the board to determine. My
Right.
understanding based
That's what
upon
we're
last
determining.
meeting was that the board thought they had enough information. And the reason they kept you kept the hearing open.
It's a draft.
We normally do, right, is so that we can prepare the draft.
Yeah. But, I mean, a draft is the kind of thing that gets potentially revised if there's
yeah.
revisions to be made.
And between
maybe-
now and the 28th,
Yeah,
and at the 28th,
yeah,
but that's board business.
right.
Yeah, but can we post, like, can we just make sure we get that, like, 2 days before, not the day
Well, you
of?
have it in your packet, and I emailed it out.
Right, no, but I mean, if there's a revision before the next meeting, can we just make sure that there's enough time so we can
Sure.
close the
And
meeting?
I think we can state that the revisions will be quite minor, and that it could be the kind of thing that will go in an email, let's say, a wording change here. I already put some wording changes in today. So, okay, well, I will obviously do the board's will. What's your feeling?
We had the draft decision on Friday,
Yeah, we do.
so that's our job to be prepared for this meeting. They made modifications to it, but we still have a couple of
I
weeks to
thought
make
it
the
came
decision.
last, I didn't see it Friday.
Came in the package.
Okay.
Our draft decision that we had Evan prepare.
You will receive that this afternoon.
Yeah, there was
And in my email, I acknowledged the late hour and suggested that the board, based upon the previous meeting, was reasonable to consider closing the hearing and voting the project,
Yeah.
and then scheduling September 28th as an agenda item to review and ratify the decision,
Yeah,
the written decision.
That's been typically what
Yes.
we've done for large projects. Certainly not the only way to do it, but it's something that we have traditionally done. I don't know, if somebody were to make a motion to close the public hearing and vote, then we will do
If the
that.
majority wants it open, leave it open.
Okay, what's the sense of the board?
If
I'll
there's
make a motion to close the public meeting and take a vote.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second? Okay, we have no second.
I think at the end of the day, if it's
Well,
not
then,
going to
that's
affect
your
the
vote.
process,
Okay, then that's the vote. Okay, this is going to be...
we can make a resident happy
Yeah.
and give them time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not going to affect, it's
Probably
not going to
not
hurt
hurt
their process, slow it down.
It's not a document for public input.
We got it. Okay.
Okay, well then, I think we've gotten as far as we're going to get on this tonight. That means anybody on the board has comments on that draft, we should get them to Evan, circulate any of the changes we have. That's a board working document, that's not a public document until it becomes what we feel is the final. So it's not going to circulate, it's not. But we will take that up. When's our next meeting?
28th.
28th? Okay, we will take that
Motion
up.
to continue, or
Huh?
do we need a motion to continue, or no?
If you're
Yeah,
keeping
we
the
will need a
hearing-
motion to continue if that's what the board wants.
You're leading it. You're
You
leading
can make the
meeting.
motion.
A motion to continue until, is it the 28th?
Second.
We got a motion, we have a second. In favor? Aye.
aye.
I'm as good with it as anything. Okay, then we're going to have to take that, the approval up at the next meeting. Thanks. Thank you. Next up is 150, 152 Dalton Road. This is to take your memory a bit, this is the 40 by 60-foot detached garage exceeding 900 square feet. I presume we have somebody here from the proponent. Do we? The owner of 150 Dalton will be right here, I think, a couple minutes away. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Well, then we'll certainly keep it open long enough. Oh, hi, Paul. Hey. Yeah, technically, you're gonna have to mull on the stuff on the west campus, but
yep.
it's short,
Okay, cool.
unless you were watching it on the phone.
I was on the road.
Yeah, they kind of,
Frown on that.
okay, let me see if there is anything else that we can take up in the meantime.
Should have some minutes.
The minutes of August 10th, do we actually have copies of that? Or did we get them last time around? I vaguely
In the
remember.
packet.
You do not have hard copies of it.
Okay, why don't everybody
Did we
take a
have them
minute
last time
to
around?
look at
You
the
may
Last
have the last.
August 10th minutes, and maybe we can get those off the plate.
I'm not sorry about them. I didn't have time. I printed them out, but I didn't read them.
They're in here somewhere.
They're not in the packet this evening.
They're only online, okay.
Mike, I'm going to abstain because I can't remember if I read them last time.
Yeah,
And I
okay.
didn't read them again this time, so.
Okay. Well, you can always pull them up. Yeah, I do recall. Don't you just love high-tech? Yeah, they're right at the bottom. You. Okay. Oh, yeah. Just with it. Right, that. Update Chris. Yeah, I've seen this. Okay, do people feel comfortable to go ahead with this?
Yep.
I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of August 10th.
Motion to approve the minutes from August 10th. Second.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 And you're abstaining?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, minutes are approved, and we're still waiting on Dalton. Huh? Okay. We'll give him another couple of minutes.
So, in the meantime, under next meeting dates?
Yeah.
To remind the board, this upcoming Monday, it's actually the 19th, on the agenda, but September 19th is the tri-board meeting.
That's going to be up at Town Hall?
No, at the school administration building.
And that just came in
Oh,
today.
okay, good. That's,
The agenda came.
Yeah.
Yep, and I believe it's for 6 PM.
yeah, I saw that.
And
It
that's,
wasn't-
the two items are MBTA zoning. You'll have a presentation from the executive director of NIMCOG.
Yep.
And there'll be a discussion, I believe, on the SOAR policy, the new
Yep.
revised SOAR policy. Next Wednesday, you scheduled a special meeting to continue your public hearing on the citizens petition.
Yep.
If I have it correctly, you're starting that meeting at 7:30.
Was it 7:30? Is that still work for
Next Wednesday.
next Wednesday, 7:30? Okay, so be it.
Okay? And then your regularly scheduled meeting is September 28th, and then October 12th.
Okay, it's going to be a busy couple of weeks.
And then town meeting in October as well.
Okay,
Evan, I mentioned I won't be at Monday's meeting.
Yes.
okay. I'll be there, so. And there was a slide deck that went out with the, with that agenda, as I recall. Yeah.
Did you see the meeting on Mondays at Town Hall? Meeting Monday?
It's right over here at the administration.
Oh, at the school.
School administration.
And items that are scheduled for your September 28th meeting include tonight's continuation. Lowell 5 on Fletcher Street is doing a small parking lot expansion.
Okay.
The Odd Fellows is coming in for a minor modification related to the freestanding telephone pole that you see on the property.
Okay, yeah.
Nasset Drive is on your agenda for a pending planning board recommendation to town meeting on the street acceptance,
Okay.
and a new public hearing for 84 Turnpike.
What's that one?
That is Martell Tree. So it's coming in under zoning as an outdoor contractor's yard.
Okay. Keep us busy.
And you'll also have Charles Way A&R.
Ah, okay. That's,
Can I back up? The 21st is at 7:30, correct?
That's
Yeah.
what you discussed at your last meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate because I couldn't remember. I didn't put it in my calendar, so it didn't exist.
okay. Well, we've got all of the end of the meeting stuff squared away.
Well, since we have our calendars out, town meeting opens on October 17th, it's a Monday,
Okay.
and likely continued to Thursday the 20th.
Yeah, how many warrant articles do they have now? Does anybody know?
I saw it.
Be around
Bet
30.
Paul knows. Yeah, well, it would be nice if it were only a two-nighter.
Looks like there are 28.
Yeah, it's probably a two-nighter. With maybe a chance to grab some dinner the second night.
Let's not talk about food.
Should we take this should we go out of order, so we're not waiting?
We
Can I
could,
make a
but that's
motion to take it
gonna
out of
take a
order?
while. I guess though, there's no harm in it.
I wouldn't start Riverneck. You can do the 270 Billerica Road continuance.
Yeah, that we need to do.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to go out of
Motion
order?
to continue 270 Billerica Road. Do we know the date?
I'm going to presume it would be the next regular meeting, which would be
Yeah, the
a couple of
28th.
weeks from now. They did send a letter on it. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw that. It basically said
Okay.
their engineering's running behind. I can appreciate that.
All right, so motion to continue till our next scheduled meeting,
Second.
which is,
Okay, sounds good. Do I have a second? I got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's moved forward. Any word yet on the? Okay. It's as quiet as it ever gets at
light, dude.
planning board meeting.
Oh, yes.
So that's coming up.
We should have a commercial break.
And then
No
Riverneck.
commercial to put up there now.
Used to just being able to turn the camera off and zoom.
So if the board's inclined, we can do the preliminary subdivision, which is
Oh,
the
okay.
last item on
Let's
your
do that.
agenda.
Good idea.
Shouldn't take
Are
too
the
long.
opponents here?
Yes.
Good, okay, yeah, let's do that.
Smart.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Robert Buckley, I have from the law firm of Greenwood Bronson. I have representatives of the applicant as well as Christine Hunt from my office. As you know, we filed a preliminary subdivision for the property, which, I don't know if we have a picture of it, but the purpose of the filing was essentially to allow us to preserve our zoning rights, to consider options as we go forward with the property. And it is a preliminary subdivision plan. It is for discussion purposes. We intend to file within 7 months a definitive, which is required by the statute.
Understood.
Fairly straightforward. Not requesting any waivers, and it's inconsistent with your subdivision rules and regulations.
Very good. Okay. Well, I understand procedurally what this is about, and certainly well within your rights to do that. So, is there anybody that would like to discuss? I don't think there's a great deal to discuss about it. I would
So
accept
the-
any
Yeah, so
discussion.
the reason this was on your agenda was
Yeah.
was submitted.
Right.
The board, under your definitive subdivision regulations, preliminary subdivision is described, concept plan, and it talks about a number of discussions with the
Yeah.
board and the applicant. Presumably that is to discuss any design waivers that may be proposed, and some other issues that you would eventually review in a more detailed manner. Paul Haverty, Town Council, is just looking up to see how long you have to act, to take a vote on the preliminary plan.
It's 45 days.
Mr. Chairman, we're in no hurry, and if you need a continuance on that, we'll provide that. It's more to provide if staff wants to have discussions over it, we have ample time to have those discussions. We certainly would welcome any feedback you have on it. As I said, it is a preliminary subdivision, and as I explained to clients, it's more of a consultation document. It does have some legal significance.
Because I wanted to go in there.
Excuse me.
I'd rather hear it now.
Where is it?
It has legal significance, but it does have the purpose of prompting discussion between staff, the board, in preparation of the definitive plan.
Understood. Okay, I would,
Doesn't come up when you click on it.
So you want to describe the process after?
yeah, just give us the
Yeah,
legal
so-
background.
So when a preliminary subdivision plan is submitted to the board can either approve the plan as submitted, approve it with suggested modifications, or deny it. And if you deny the preliminary subdivision plan, then you've got a list of reasons for denial, and those reasons should be related to areas of your subdivision rules and regulations that the proposal is not in compliance with. It should realistically be approved with suggested modifications if there are ways in which you can actually suggest changes to the subdivision plan that would bring it into compliance.
But it sounds as if the preliminary as presented is pretty much in compliance anyway.
Can you confirm
My
that?
understanding.
Yeah, to council's point, we're not here to force the issue this evening, so if you want more time to consider it, to review it, that's fine with us.
Yeah. Okay.
Where's the entrance to the street? Is this the same entrance that's already there?
I can't see it when I click on it.
I know, it doesn't show.
The entrance to this, I'm trying to, there's a street here. Where, is that the same spot that it's currently?
I'm not sure it's the exact same spot, but in order to have a direct line in terms of the linear run of the subdivision road, and you don't want it to be curved or angled, the preference is straight in with the cul-de-sac at the end. So I would not assume it's the exact same location, but it's approximate where the driveway is.
It looks like, it. I think it looks like it. I'm just trying to kind
I
of
just don't want to
orientate.
state on the record that it's the exact same location because it's an engineered plan.
Just took a while.
You got it to load?
Mine won't like.
Me either.
Paul's just looking up one more piece of information on
Okay.
what happens after preliminary.
I'm not connecting to the internet.
I can't see it.
All right, so, well, what, you got it? Okay.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I would be, and I'm sure my client would be more than agreeable to allow the board and staff to have ample opportunity to review it.
Okay, I think
With any-
that would
with
be a
any
wise thing.
questions. I mean, we're not going to resolve anything this evening of any.
Okay. But the filing of this is the significant item right here. It hasn't been filed.
Yeah, it
Is that
begins
is that
the
correct?
process of zoning freeze.
Okay. Okay. In that case, let us continue this item.
I wouldn't necessarily be asking for the 28th because your agenda has other items on it. I'd give your staff and the board ample time to review it, so.
Okay.
Why don't we go to October 12th? Is it just,
Yeah, let's go to October 12th, and that'll give us plenty of time to deal with it.
Is it possible to make a comment from the Zoom people or ask a question?
Yeah, but this is not a piece of public hearing.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make a comment, but if I
No,
can't.
it would be best that you not do that. We're not in a public hearing yet. We would get there, but we're not there now.
All right.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the definitive plan has to be submitted within 7 months of the submittal of the preliminary plan.
Okay. So that lets you know at the time. So we're talking, if this were to ever become activated, we're talking the spring sometime, like winter, spring. Okay, so it sounds as if we don't have any particular action we need to take on it right now. The filing has taken place, and I have a suspicion.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yep.
make a final comment?
Yes,
As the
please.
12th approaches, I'll be in court discussions with staff. If you need more time, we'll just.
Absolutely. Okay, so you talk to Evan, and we'll
Yeah,
work that
and
one out.
if we do that, we're not trying to move the football down the field.
I understood. Understood.
Thank you.
Yep. Very good. Okay, so no action required on that, but thank you for getting us at least started with it. And I believe our proponent for Dalton Road is now here. No, sure, no problem. And let's see, do you want to speak to this? Your attorney want to speak to us? Yeah.
Right into the fire. That's unsettling.
From the hip because I left my package in the car. I am earning no points in Chelmsford with my timing. I apologize. I decided I would take Route 4, and that turned out to be a slow route tonight. So we are back this evening. What I would like to encourage the board to do is to with a couple things in mind to focus on the petition before you for the construction of the barn. And I don't know if we have the video tonight. I maybe don't need it, but if we have it, that's great. This is somewhat in context. I do understand that people are concerned that we've got the proposal for a barn and the potential to use that for commercial as well as residential purposes. And the concern that if the commercial purposes aren't permitted, then we shouldn't be allowing the barn. That said, our building inspector has issued a letter indicating, going back all the way to 1955, that it appears that this use has expanded over time. I think we all know that. We've been sort of treating it as a prior non-conforming use that has kind of expanded or morphed over time, as they often do. We obviously, and I think you're all aware, have had several letters right from the building department over the years indicating that's the case. However, I have had an opportunity to chat with town council. We are, I guess, presently interpreting that one-page 1955 letter as the grant of a use variance. Chelmsford is one of the few towns that historically, long ago, actually granted use variances. You no longer do. However, it is a suggestion that the proper approach here would be to apply to the ZBA to request a modification of the use variance or an amendment to that old variance. That's actually part of the reason for my delay. I had it all done. The packages are here with me along with the check and the filing, so that filing is all prepared with literally a blow-by-blow as best we can put it together about the transitions of the uses over time. Not only the building department letters, we've done some research into prior users of the property, but I think we have a strong package to support the modification of the variance. So with that in mind, we're kind of back to the original proposal, which was Luc Fougere and his family and his landscaping business are requesting to construct a barn on the property. It exceeds 900 square feet, which is really the planning board jurisdiction. But again, I'm not trying to say you shouldn't be asking these other questions. I think I asked Luke, you know, if you couldn't do any business on that property at all, would you still build it? And he said 100%. He's now told me that 3 times. Absolutely, he would still use it for personal uses. He's got a family with, you know, recreational vehicles and ATVs and things like that, you know, his own wood shop and things like that that would go into the barn, even if he couldn't do anything on this property. That said, I'm confident that we will, you know, maybe a conditional amendment to the variance, but it's our strong opinion that we have a strong case to amend the variance for the use that was existing back in 1955. And one of the things that we weren't fully aware of at the last meeting that we've learned a little bit more of is the user prior to Anthony's that was in there for at least 10 years. As a tenant, he both rented the house and also operated a landscape business with hardscape. Luke had an opportunity to talk with him the other day. The operation sounded like everything that Luke does and more. So again, these are only working back, but you know, there's certainly been reliance on appropriate due diligence and reliance on information both from the town as well as historical information regarding the business use of the property, the rear of the property. What my submission presented to you in this most recent submission last week, I guess, is walking through which Attorney Dane appropriately called out that the original application really didn't respond to the points of your bylaw. So my letter does that in terms of talking about, you know, economic benefits or impact on the town, the social impacts on the town, and in a nutshell, without going through each of those individually, which I've done in my letter, I would call your attention to not only the support of the significant majority of the immediate abutters and those, you know, another lot away. We've actually got a couple more since the letter was submitted last week. But also, you know, things like the streetscape maintains as a residential property. The one instance where there was a noted, you know, the truck was causing a traffic jam because he was trying to back out or back in or something like that. You know, fluke instance, Luke has advised it was somebody coming from out of state that didn't know, and he couldn't find the property because it didn't look like a business. But from the streetscape, it looks like a home with a driveway out back. The operation is out back. The abutters are buffered pretty well, but Luke has worked with all of them to, see if they wanted additional plantings or fence. He's worked with several of them on actually building some fence. He's trying to be a good neighbor and intends to be a good neighbor to everyone now and going forward. This is the home he chose for his family to raise his children and to be a part of the community, and also to be able to have that work-life balance. Has he actually cut? He's a young guy, but he's cut back on his larger operation that included lawn maintenance and so forth in the past. So he's actually cut that portion of the business out. Primarily what's happening here at the current time is storage, and then a place where his employees would come, load the trailer, and leave for the day. They don't work late nights. They come in at your typical, 7 a.m.-ish hour. They don't typically work weekends, never on Sunday, occasionally on a Saturday. So because we are filing with the ZBA, it is my request that the planning board look really just at the structure itself. It is a large structure. It will go a long way in cleaning up the site from some 50 or even 100-year-old, metal sheds. I don't know if anyone's been out. I know we did offer a site walk if anybody was interested, but the property right now is, probably as neat as it could be, or close, given what's there. But those sheds have been there for decades and decades. Sheds, garage, shop. They're corrugated metal. They serve a purpose, but they're not very pretty. Those would go away. Certainly, we would agree to it a condition that those would all go away, the ones identified in our application materials, should the garage barn building be permitted. I know there was some comment in the past about the size and did it need to be that big. I don't know. I have a family with a garden center and a family kids that drive quads and things like that, and there seems to never be enough space. I have a 3-car garage. I can only barely park my 1 car in there with all the stuff. So, that's a personal preference. It is not an indication that there's an intention to expand the business, to add additional things. But again, I think that's really something that the ZBA should be hashing out through that variance amendment application. I don't know, do you want to, Luke, do you want to say anything now or respond to comments?
I completely agree with everything you're saying.
Good, hope so.
I feel like it's been very drawn out, and since then, the business portion has been separated to the ZBA, and we filed this with Dalton LLC, which is the holder of the property, and regardless of its use, the ZBA will be able to control that, and I feel like that's really important. I also feel like what's very important is we are under the constraints.
Point of order, it's a public meeting, we can't.
Yeah. Okay, you probably do need to get up now.
Apologies. I'll start clean. Since we've separated the issues from building and now ZBA, the ZBA will be able to control what we use our property and building for, regardless of whether we operate a building there, a business there or not. All the buildings there are decrepit. They're barely dry at best. They might have a little bit of plumbing and a little bit of electricity and lighting, but that's pretty much it. One very valid point that I want to bring up is that we meet or beat all of the constraints. With the takedown of those 4 buildings that we're proposing to take down to replace, we're only at 12% as opposed to 15, which is allotted. So that's the reasoning and calculation for the original size. But other than that, I just really need a new building, and this is the size we chose that I decided to make based on the calculations with the property surveyor and my contractor, based on what we are legally allowed to do, and we are actually still under that regardless of the size of it, because our parcel is 1.66 acres, not 1.16. So we meet or beat all those. Other than that, I want to start putting my kids to bed again, and I don't want to worry about this anymore, and I would really love if you could approve this building so that we could move forth. And the next thing is the ZBA, which we've prepared and spent timeless nights doing so.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, it looks like there are two courses of action that are in play. One is to get a conditional, an approval of some sort from this board, potentially conditional. A second would be to wait until the ZBA is finished their work. Now, that's likely to be, I don't know, what, a couple of weeks, a month? When are they hearing this matter?
I don't recall the exact date of the meeting. I would obviously prefer option one. That because of advertising requirements in the filing, I think Evan may be able to help, but I think it's at least 3 to 4 weeks out before a hearing, and probably more given when I'm filing. And then there's obviously, decision-making and appeals periods and so forth, and we'd really like to get a foundation poured.
Okay.
So,
It will be heard on October 6th,
That will be heard on October 6th?
which is the next ZBA meeting.
Okay.
I don't really see why we should wait. I mean, I don't see why we should wait.
You suggesting we go ahead and,
Yeah,
I mean, the,
I would much rather have a finding from the ZBA before we push this forward.
I agree with Nancy.
yeah.
why would we do that when it would be up to them at that stage? It's already gone this far.
Because we just changed it midstream now. Like, we've been going down this one path, and now all of a sudden, this meeting, everything's changed. And I need to
But the
do.
building hasn't changed.
Right, and I have issues with the
That's
building
all
as
it-
is, to
that's
be
all
quite
it is.
honest. I have issues with the size of the building.
Right,
So
just dealing with.
I would like to do my homework, and I think waiting for
Well,
the,
we've had time to do our homework. We're gonna
this is
drag
a
this out
change.
more. We're gonna
That
be
this is
into the
going
fall.
down.
Well, it looks like we have someone else to.
Yeah, yeah, we are in public hearing, I believe, so we're going to.
Well, let's,
my only comment for anyone who believes we should wait, we would still be here asking for your approval of this barn if the ZBA said, take your business out of town. Again, I don't think that's gonna happen, but if it did, we still want to build this barn.
Yeah,
So
I understood.
I think for that reason, I think some of you do, but I just wanted to reiterate that, because if we waited on ZBA, we're gonna come back here, and even if they said no, we're still gonna say we still want this barn. So
Okay.
that is where we stand.
all right. Looks like we have some public comment.
Yes, I'm Henry Dane. I'm here for the abutter,
Yep,
once again, for the third time. And the last time you considered this several weeks ago, I think the only issue before the board that was holding up a decision was whether or not the current use of the property was in conformity with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Since that time, I think 3 things have happened. One is that Ms. Brown had sent you a letter, which I think was remarkable for at least 2 things. One is that it did not deny at all that the use of the property was a business use and not a personal use, and that the barn they had represented many times that it was for the purpose of cleaning up the site, moving the equipment, storing the materials that are used in the business that's on the property. And it was also remarkable in that the only reason that it gave for the possibility of zoning compliance was that what was there had been there for quite a while, and that they had done due diligence to find out whether the zoning permitted it. And neither one of those creates any exception to the zoning bylaws. Merely being there for a long time only matters if it was there longer than the time when the property was put in a residential zone. So it is not so-called grandfather just by being there for a long time. It had to be there before the zoning was changed. And there was no evidence that it had been. In fact, the paperwork with regard to the garden shop clearly indicates that at that time, it was zoned residential, otherwise there would not have been an issue. So then I had asked the building commissioner for an opinion under Section 7 on the zoning compliance of the property. And his opinion, which I'm sure you have, in response to my request, was not only was that the property as it is now currently used is not legal, because it could only continue in its current use with a variance granted by the Board of Appeals. I'm not sure, and certainly if it's not in compliance now, it would not be in compliance if you added a large commercial building to it. And it is, no question, a commercial building, given its size, the doors, the other features of the building. To put it in the context of reality, if the current owner wished to sell that property to somebody else, they would say, what is this? This is not a residential property. This is a commercial property. If for no other reason, it has a 40 by 60 steel garage building right in the middle of it. So, so that I don't think that I'm not sure that even the planning board has the authority to issue a permit to construct a building on a property that is in violation of the zoning bylaw, or that after the construction of the building, it would still be in violation of the zoning bylaw. And so what's going to happen now, I assume, is Ms. Brown will file an application for something with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the building inspector mentioned a variance. I don't see the circumstances that under Section 10 of Chapter 48, the circumstances of that property in any way could support a request for a variance. The standards are very strict. And so, but that's what he said. And so the matter will go to the Board of Appeals, and my suggestion is that if you're inclined to approve this proposal at all, that you certainly need to wait until the zoning matter is resolved by the Board of Appeals.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Paul, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah.
I certainly can. So I think there's two separate questions here. One is the construction of the structure, and the second is the use. The construction of the structure can be done, and you can approve that as part of the hearing tonight, because it's separate and independent from how that structure is going to be used. The use, I agree with Attorney Dane that it was originally allowed through the issuance of a use variance. Use variances are no longer allowed in Chelmsford. However, the Board of Appeals has the authority to modify any previously issued variance that it is granted. So it does have the authority to modify the previously issued variance. The question as to whether or not they're going to be able to get that modification, is up to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They'll review the circumstances, the history of the use, and the standards for the grant of a variance, and they'll make their determination. But that is really separate from the question that you're asked tonight, which is whether or not you'll allow the construction of this barn. The construction of the barn, the applicant is stating they will construct it one way or the other, whether it's going to be allowed to be used in conjunction with the existing use that is not necessarily legally commenced, or whether they're going to use it, simply as a, single-family residence structure, barn to be used in conjunction with their single-family residence. One way or the other, I don't think you're going to get any additional clarification by continuing this, Because if the Board of Appeals grants, first of all, the Board of Appeals could grant the modification of the use variance and the neighbor could appeal it. So then you'd be talking about, years potentially before you got to a resolution. And you wouldn't be able to wait that long on this. So I don't think that you really do yourselves any favor by punting on this issue unless you don't have enough information to make your decision tonight. And I haven't been sort of a part of this process up to this date, so I don't know, if there is any additional information that needs to be reviewed in order for you to make your decision. But if there isn't, then I would recommend that you make your decision tonight. But any such decision would have to have a condition that states that the use that's proposed as a, landscaping contractor's yard, whatever, is not allowed in this structure unless it is approved by the zoning board of appeals.
So a condition,
So question for Paul.
yeah, go ahead.
Nancy?
Thank you. The question I have, Paul, is the use that was permitted was basically a florist shop, which is an agricultural use and is actually permitted in a residential area. The use that is currently there is a contractor yard, which is an industrial use and is not permitted in any residential area. Does the ZBA have the authority to modify to that extent?
That'll be up to the...
Well, the ZBA has the authority to modify a previously granted variance. The question whether or not that modification, to the extent that's being proposed, would be upholdable if there were an appeal to a trial court, it's a completely separate question. I haven't looked at, sort of how it would comply with the standards for the issuance of a variance, but of course, variances are supposed to be rarely granted. The standards for the grant of a variance are very difficult to meet, and they would have to be able to convince the Board of Appeals that they meet those standards, and if an appeal was taken, they would have to convince the trial court that they've met those standards.
May I want to say one thing in response to that? The letter that was given to authorize the garden shop is not in any way designated on it as a variance. In fact, it wasn't necessary for there to be a variance. At most, it was given a permit to conduct a home occupation. But even that wasn't necessary because it was a use that was already permitted as an accessory use in that district. And therefore, I think it's a stretch to call that letter a variance. So I think it'd be very questionable as to whether or not the Board of Appeals could modify that.
But that'll be up to them.
Yeah, it'd be up to them.
Yeah, that's up to the
This
ZBA.
is a commercial barn,
Yeah.
the way it's
But
proposed
that,
now.
so
Keep it moving, we're gonna go to the variance, so.
they're, both attorneys are
No,
saying
it's an
something.
industrial barn, not a commercial barn.
Okay. You wish to speak?
If I may speak.
We may anyway.
Chairman of the board, members of the board, apologize for my attire. It's been kind of a long day. I'm the neighbor abutting and owning the property line along 42 Stedman Street. We share about 80 feet, I believe. I don't know the Fougiers all that well. All I know is ever since they've moved in, I've noticed significant improvements all along that property line. I've never felt disturbed by anything that went on their property as far as any trucks or industrial this or that. I feel like everything he's done has been to improve the neighborhood. I've seen the property plans and the plans for this building. I think it's great. I don't have a problem with it. I share probably some of the longest property lines with the Fougiers, and if anybody should have a problem with it, it would be me. And I think it's fine, and I think it's great. And I appreciate the Fougiers and everything they do for the neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve
Okay.
with conditions.
Okay, with the conditions as stated?
Yep.
Okay.
Close the public hearing. We get close the public hearing.
Oh, we have to close the hearing first.
Yeah, so why don't,
I believe there may be different people that wanted to speak.
Okay. At this point, I don't think repeating positive opinions of the neighbor is really what we're talking about in terms of gathering more data for this board. It's nice, now, we've heard from several of them. If people want to come up and say something that has not already been said, I'd encourage you to do that. But we're looking for new material to consider here from the public hearing. Does anybody have something new that they think they can add to this?
I'm Larry Thatcher, 77 Linwood Street, a direct abutter. You've heard from my counsel regarding this particular application. I would like to point out that this building proposed is an industrial building. I keep hearing dimensions of 40 by 60. Please look at the documents before you. It is really a 54 by 60 square foot, 54 by 60 foot building, because the footprint, according to the application, requires the overhang to be included. That is 3,240 square feet. This is not a New England backyard barn. This is an industrial building. There are four, I say that again, 4 extra large truck size garage doors. This is not for personal use. Further, it's a 32-foot high building. Those direct abutters, the line of sight from their bedrooms cannot be mitigated.
Yeah.
Further, there is a letter on file. It's part of the public street file. It's part of a complaint filed a couple of years ago from a realtor in the area that specifically speaks to the diminutive nature of anything of a commercial operation on that property to the abutter's sale. So I would suggest that when you take a look at what is required under 195-103B, that you look at the adverse effects of the proposed case that will not outweigh its beneficial impacts. Think carefully about what are the beneficial impacts to the town or the neighborhood. I don't see any. The only beneficial impacts are to the individual property owner. What is going to be adverse is to all of the abutters. Ultimately, if they try to sell their homes, this is a very desired neighborhood, the Westlands, that any purchaser is going to look at this operation, or if there's no commercial operation going there, a commercial industrial building in their backyard, basically. And that is going to affect property values. So if we look at the adverse effect to the town, I would suggest the town may be required to adjust the tax valuation. In fact, could be even liable if a sale were to occur and less than commercial values were attained, they might find some liability. So there is a significant adverse effect onto the town and the neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry. I think there were a couple inaccuracies. Unless I misheard him, I believe Mr. Thatcher said that the building was 32 feet tall. The building is just shy of 20 feet tall. I know Mr. Dane had looked at kind of adding up the dimensions on the plan submitted previously, and it looks like it's a little bit over 20, but the way it's designed is the structure actually sits down over the foundation for several inches.
Yeah.
So it's 19 feet something, not 32 feet tall. I think you're aware there are plenty of supporters.
Yeah.
As to the best of our knowledge, Mr. Thatcher overlaps by 30 or 40 feet at the rear. He's the only abutter that's in opposition. So I think
Okay.
other neighbors believe that this is possible.
Understood. Okay, we're looking again for new material relevant to this particular structure in this particular place. And I think let me make a comment here. It's pretty clear that with the zoning board, the ZBA, looking at this from a use, potentially from a use perspective, that the use determination falls in their bailiwick, not in ours. Is that a fair statement, Paul?
I do think that's a fair statement, other than, again, to the extent you're going to grant a special permit for this, it should contain a condition
Right.
addressing the use, and that it would not be allowed unless they get relief from the zoning board.
Okay, that we can certainly do, if so inclined. We'll have to see what the vote looks like. Brian, you got something?
Yes, Brian Latina, Precinct 9, Town Meeting Rep, and 15 Jesse Road, that's my address. It's fortunate that planning board is allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to do that, and they do that every once in a while.
You think?
Yeah, 200 Mill Road, where we did a minor addition to the building. It turned out to be a massive chemical plant. We actually have several, I'm aware of several of these style, I'm not going to call them barns, they're steel buildings, but they have them in residential areas around town. It's not terribly unusual. However, as a town meeting rep, I'm very concerned that the board might step over its requirement that it follows the law in just looking at, with closing one eye and looking at one side of the fence here. Building a steel building in a neighborhood has been done in Chelmsford, in some real nice neighborhoods. But once you begin using it for a different purpose, and from the video, you know, the overhead shots that you can see online right now, if you look at them, it's quite a construction area. And it was described that way in the original discussion that you folks heard. Then the next time, it wasn't sure what we were going to use it for, and now it's called a barn. We've gone, 9 North Road was a barn,
Okay.
like structure. So if you're changing zoning, that's beyond your purview, that's town meeting. Zoning sticks for 30 years or so usually. The neighbors and anybody else moving in have a right to protect their property, and it's our responsibility as a town not to just say, well, it's already there, so let's just build more in there. So I would tread very carefully, and I don't believe time is of the essence. These buildings whip up pretty quickly, so it can be done.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Brian. Okay, I'm not seeing a whole lot more people jumping up. We've had a couple attempts here to get a motion going anyway. The first, if we were to have a motion at this point, the first motion would have to be to
Close the public hearing. Okay, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing is closed. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Now, do we have additional discussion, or we want to go to a second motion?
To me, this is a commercial property. Like, I'm willing to, if they present a barn structure, to entertain that, but this is a commercial structure, and I don't think it conforms to the neighborhood, so.
We would have a contingent, right? Is that what we're looking at?
No, I'm looking at this, like, regardless of what the ZBA approves.
Yeah.
This alone, to me,
Yes.
is a commercial building in a residential neighborhood, and it does not conform to the neighborhood. If they're gonna build it anyways, then I would like them to present something that would conform to the neighborhood and be a barn that would fit this, because this is a very nice neighborhood. And so that's where I stand.
Okay.
Regardless. And I'm certainly willing to entertain the other, you know, if it's gonna
Yeah.
be truly a barn, not commercial.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make, and some real validity to it. On the other hand, we're not usually in the business of making major aesthetic decisions about particular structures. I know we've wanted to many times, and a couple of times, because of the way the overlays work, we have been allowed to do that. I remember asking a particular, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, asking a particular pharmacy if they would put Greco-Roman sculpture in sconces on the walls of their new structure, but that one didn't fly.
But they presented the
But
plan as a
I can see the point.
industrial
Nonetheless, we should probably steer pretty clear of aesthetics if we can. At least that's my view, my opinion.
My opinion, it's 1,000% better improvement of the property that's there now. That's my opinion.
So
It's-
my
It's a huge
opinion,
improvement of the property that's there now. Huge.
Go ahead, Nancy.
yeah,
Nancy?
my opinion is that whether this is used as an industrial contractor's yard, or it is used without that business in it, this building is still an industrial building. It's not, it has 3 large truck doors. It does not have residential-sized doors on it. I'm not talking about the architecture and the fact that it's a metal building, a metal industrial building in a residential neighborhood, which I find to be incompatible anyway. But, and I'm certainly not talking about the slope of the roof in terms of architecture, but I am talking about the fact that this is an industrial building. And we protect our neighborhoods. Of all the things that our zoning regulations do, we protect our neighborhoods. So then the question is, they are here for a building plan because this is such a large secondary structure, for us to evaluate it against special permitting. Therefore, it's our place to be evaluating, does it have a detrimental impact on the neighborhood based on what it is? Use or no use, as an industrial use, this is an industrial building. So I'm not buying it. I absolutely believe in protection of neighborhoods.
Okay.
You're assuming the use now.
Yeah, and we
No,
heard
I'm
from the
not.
neighborhood,
No,
and the neighborhood
no,
actually
I
said
just
yes.
said, I don't care
Favor.
whether it's being used for a contractor's yard or not. This is still an industrial building being plopped into a residential neighborhood.
I spent 10 years in that neighborhood. I've talked to all the abutters, I believe, well, a lot of them, and I've only seen one dissenting voice so far.
Okay.
And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I guess the observation I'd make is if we're going to be filled up with hay for farm animals, and of course agriculture is a completely permitted use, it's not even an accessory, it's a permitted use, would we be having the same conversation about the nature of the building itself? But
That's an industrial
anyway,
building.
that's my farming perspective. Okay, any more before we take this presumably to a vote? Okay.
Well, I guess I have a question for Luke. I don't know if that's appropriate to ask. but-
Not at this point, I think we're beyond the use. Okay. And we have already closed the public hearing, so.
I'd like to make,
You could entertain a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Yeah, that we could do. That would be the way to do it, if we really wish.
would you, Deidre?
Do you want us to?
Yeah, I would,
Okay.
sorry.
Motion to
Make a motion
open up
to
the
open
public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Passed? Okay.
So
And-
Luke, would you consider making a building that was less commercial in nature?
So the reason that we didn't build yet, but that we are building this building is for my holding company, Dalton LLC. And yes, you're right, we are focused on its use, which is the ZBA going to tell me how to use it. We've already done engineering and cement plans and everything that we are required to do before we even file a permit. So we are already tens of thousands of dollars into this project. Time, I mean, finding a contractor at this point before next spring, probably slim to none. And I understand the whole ZBA thing. That's, like, let's say this building gets built in 6 months from now if we get approved tonight. There's plenty of time to be discussing what we're gonna use it for. But in short, the building's been engineered, and the reason that we engineered it the way that it is, like a barn, is to continue the heritage in the town, that it's a farming town. I'm not saying that we are agricultural at the moment, but like I said, I discussed everything about this building prior to pressing go with an engineer, and this is what we fell upon because it met and beat every and any aspect that was required of us.
Okay.
But I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Most of my neighbors that I've heard from and or gone to their house asked me where we were located. They had no idea that our
Understood.
business was even back there. You can't see a thing, and it is not 32 feet. It's under 20. Otherwise, we would have filed for another special permit because it would be over 20. I'm well versed in this at this point. I just really want to move forward with it. Either way, I appreciate the heck out of your time. It's been drawn out. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to supplement the location of the structure is part of the reason it's in the middle of the yard and back is because it keeps it furthest from all of the abutters. I mean, we're not talking 15 or 20 feet, we're talking 70 feet, 80 feet, 100 feet. And it's immediately behind the house, so really from almost any angle, I drove by it the first time I went to find Luke and said, oh, I went by it, because you can't see, you won't be able to see the structure, and you really, all you see into the property is the driveway going out back.
Okay. Yep, thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any other questions? Because I'm going to ask a question now that
Should
you've
we
opened it.
move to close the public, or are you done?
Oh, you
Well,
want some
no,
questions?
no, now that you opened it, I'm going to ask the question. Can you clarify the size of the building? It's 40 by 60. How big is the overhang? Because the original drawings had the overhang.
So the building interior of which was called the building itself, which is the concern of what's going, I guess, inside. So I'm not well versed in this portion of it, but the building itself without the overhang is 40 by 60.
Yeah, how big is the overhang?
The overhang is 16 by 60. And that was stated even by the surveyor as, I mean, he called it a shed. We're not going to call that a shed. But it's an overhang with no walls. The only wall that it shares is with the building itself. It's just an overhang.
And then can you clarify the number of acres? You said 1.66. Here it's being classified as 1.6.
1.16 is incorrect.
1.16 is incorrect?
It's 1.66 on record and most recently surveyed in 2019 and updated with our most recent plot plan.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, all you have? Anybody else? I don't.
Yeah, just a comment.
Yep.
That as we go forward with this, and they go forward with this, if the ZBA gives them a variance for a contractor's yard, I wonder if the abutters understand that he could sell to any trucking firm that would then take over as that contractor's yard with a much larger scale operation and more trucks. Because they could.
Speculating.
I'm just saying.
Stretch.
I've
Well,
seen that,
that's
I've seen that, I have seen something like this happen in neighborhoods,
Yeah, and
and it's
yes.
been disastrous.
Some of it may have to do with whether the variance, if it were to be granted,
It would,
No,
would
but when it's-
terminate or not, because you can do it either way. Is that correct, Paul? You can have a variance that runs with the land or a variance that runs with the owner.
And you can have a variance that can actually be required to be renewed periodically. So I have done work in towns where the boards will impose a variance or even a special permit and give it a one-year time limitation and require you to come back and actually get it reissued every year.
Okay, but again, this is ZBA territory, not ours.
Yes.
Right.
I was only going to add to that, if the ZBA grants approval, I expect absolutely it'll be conditioned on parameters.
Yeah,
In
I'm gonna bet you it would
1955,
be.
it was a short paragraph. In 2022, it's going to be a several-page decision. I've been speaking with Mr. Dane all along about trying to come up with some conditions that would be acceptable to his clients. He wants a way to make it enforceable. The ZBA decision, yours for that matter as well, will be recorded in the Registry of Deeds. You know, and then it becomes a matter of enforcement to the question about can somebody come in and expand it further. What's amazing to me walking into this initially was how this has gone on for over 40, probably 50, 60, 70 years, but at least 40 years with uses at least as intense as Fougere Landscaping. And Fougere has been here for 4 years already, and we didn't hear a peep out of anyone until this application for this structure was filed.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, look around. Do I see any more action? Okay, we can take a,
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
moved?
Second.
Seconded? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Now, you want to continue with your motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve,
Yeah.
subject to the approval of, through ZBA.
Now, this is a five vote required. This is a
Supermajority is.
supermajority. Okay, well, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Moved and seconded. Further discussion before we run around the room and vote? Okay, start at the end.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No,
Okay, there you have it. So, it doesn't pass at this point. It could, I suppose, come back to us after some determination's been made at the ZBA. Okay, there you have it. That's, I get 4-3 against. I'm sorry.
Three in favor, 4 against.
Yeah, it was denied, the special permit denied. No, it's denied.
Denied as presented.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Consider taking a 5-minute break between
Yeah.
this and Riverneck Road?
Yep, Riverneck Road is next.
Yes.
Let's do that.
Okay.
I believe we are still in public hearing. And I guess we're ready to hear.
Okay, good evening again. For the record, Robert Buckley, Reamer and Bronstein. With me this evening, as I said earlier, members of the development team as well as Christine Hung from my staff. I just want to set the stage here. As you all know, that we're here with a application for a use that is permitted, albeit by special permit, for the site. I want to assure the board that I know that there's been some frustrations about the continuances that we've had, but those continuances have been used or utilized to address the issues that have been raised primarily by the public hearing process from concerned citizens. We have, before this board, had an in-depth discussion of what we consider the major issues. Those would be traffic and site concerns. We spent a number of hearings on the traffic. We had a tremendous amount of information. Your consultant, I think it would be safe to say, agreed with the methodology and the conclusions that our traffic report indicated, asked for some modifications, which we did undertake. Also suggested some conditions to ensure that the representations and the potential impacts as portrayed by the development team were part of the permit, and we've worked on that also. In terms of the site design, we've heard a number of issues, concerns with the number of loading bays or loading docks. We've addressed those. We provided staff with a, is it me or is it?
No, it's the microphones, the audio system.
Closer to the mic, okay. So we have spent a tremendous amount of time preparing draft conditions for the board's consideration as well as staff. We've delivered those to the staff. We've also provided a key that indicates the comments from your consultants and how we've addressed those concerns. So that I would suspect that staff has those. And it was also an issue that the town wanted to be protected from the potential this was a so-called last mile distribution facility. I just have up on the board here some of the history of the meetings. We have worked on developing what I call a development agreement. I use the term development agreement because it's new construction and there may be other issues that get in that as we go on. My discussions with town council, you may prefer a restrictive covenant. That's fine, but the intent would be the same, to limit any question as to the potential use of this as a so-called last mile distribution. Although I think we're going to have to come to closure as to what that definition is. Some of the conditions that we've worked on fashioning, as I indicated, the definition of the last mile definition for the comfort of the town. We're requiring a robust and real-time traffic monitoring program that would allow for, I like to call it a rolling basis, but on a day-to-day basis to be able to ascertain what the vehicles entering or truck traffic entering and exiting the site. When I say truck traffic, I'm talking about what I call the long-haul vehicles. So that data and our commitment would be able to be assessed at any given point in time. We would also agree to do periodic traffic updates, as I said earlier, to confirm what we have portrayed as part of the process. We've also proposed traffic mitigation improvements that we would like to have some discussion on. Some of these have substantial costs, and we're willing to sit down with the town and negotiate those costs. And we've also made some progress on sightline visibility issues that were raised initially. We've also expanded the traffic analysis, even though we didn't think it was necessary. We looked at some of the other intersections that were suggested, and that has been provided to your consultant as well as the staff. We've also expressed a willingness to work with the abutting property owners and the residents in the corridor, the Riverneck corridor, to make some significant traffic improvements or safety improvements that they've raised, including the installation of sidewalks. It would be a major undertaking, but we have it up on the board there,
Yeah.
a proposed sidewalk program that we would work with the town to implement and provide substantial funding for the installation of that. It would require us to work with the town's engineering department, as well as this board and perhaps other boards, but we think we can get there and provide a safe and convenient access, pedestrian access way along Riverneck. All that being said, what we're here for tonight is we need some feedback from the board.
Okay.
Where do we go? And we think we have a robust package that warrants meaningful discussion. We're willing to engage in that discussion. I think that what we have done, and I know, as I said earlier, there's been some frustration, but that time was spent with significant inquiries into some of the issues that have been raised. I think we can get there. You have a willing applicant that is willing to work with the town. As I indicated earlier, we've taken some preemptive action to freeze the zoning, so the zoning's not going away as to us. But like anything else, you have to always be cognizant of what is your potential exit strategy if things don't work out. And as you can see, there are potential divisions of the property that you may lose the ability to work with an applicant that is at the table, that has the sophistication, has the experience, that can make some meaningful improvements and stand by their commitments. And with that, I think we've said almost everything over the last few months, so we'd welcome any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. Now, I want to make a comment before we go farther. Evan and I have had 2 brief meetings with the proponents, primarily to discuss procedural questions. There was some lack of clarity as to what we might do next. And so that was basically the content of those conversations. Evan, can you think of a great deal more?
No, that's a good summary.
That pretty much sums it up. But I wanted to let everybody know that, that we've heard from him. And I think some of the additional stuff that's on this list of possible mitigations may be a result of that. I don't know that, but it may be. I would suggest that we have a quick discussion amongst ourselves. It is still a public hearing, and we want to let the public in, and I'll have some words to say before we actually start that. But it looks like, have you all had a chance to read the proposal that was sent around, was it a couple of weeks ago? Evan sent it out. It was a draft.
Yeah, I had some issues with that.
Huh?
Quite, yeah.
Well, you had some very good points,
Yeah,
particularly,
'cause-
I think what you added was very good. That was, making sure that you can't get out of it by saying it's somebody else's problem.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that it was written that way. Actually, I was quite offended it was written like that. 'Cause
Well,
someone
you
who
know.
deals with real estate, I would have thought it would have been tighter.
Well, your proposal suggests it be tighter now, that's for sure.
But I mean, obviously, I'm not voting on this, but
Yeah.
quite honestly, I don't recommend the board. I think last mile distribution doesn't solve the problem that has been presented and vocalized throughout. I think it should, if they're willing to sign a no distribution, I think then we can work with it. I do still have an issue with the truck lane.
Yeah.
I know, there is only one spot where these kids can get on and off the bus. McFarland only has that one bus. You can't send these kids over Route 3 to go pick up their bus. And they have yet to move that. They've heard that.
The bus, moving the bus, though.
Hmm?
I thought they,
You can't move the bus stop.
Sure you can.
yeah, I
Where?
thought we already talked about
Where
it.
can
Anywhere the
you-
school department wants it is where it can be.
So where are you going to send the kids? Over
don't
Route
know,
3?
but
There's
just-
only one
It can
spot.
be moved, though, is what.
I'm just interjecting, saying that there are
In
solutions. to
theory.
that particular
You could actually move it onto one of the side roads, get the bus.
What side roads?
Well, there are a couple that come into.
Have you driven down there? Do you know where this bus stop is? Have
I
any of
don't
you
know
guys
where it
looked?
is now, but
Near
I
the
know
entrance,
there are
right?
places.
It's
where
like there is one road,
Yeah.
and these kids can only pick it up there. They can't, there's no, even if they put the sidewalk, it's still dangerous for them to walk anywhere else.
But that's a condition for any development on the
Yes,
site.
that is.
Right.
So
I get it,
eventually-
but there was,
eventually that-
first of all, when Mercury went in there, that was a point of contention back then. And that's why the current center of that entrance is where it is. So it doesn't impact any of the kids. And this has been brought up repeatedly. And I don't understand, if they're willing to work with us, why they need to say, hey, let's get rid of it, let's move it. They're right, there are kids over there, let's not do it. I mean, it's like,
Okay. Well-
like, that to me is
Has there
like,
been any discussion about the bus stop, a simple?
That's the school department's.
Well, I know, but we did discuss it.
Yes, we did.
And that's one of her
I
points
think
of
we'd be open
contention.
to a discussion of a school bus stop, but my experience has been that the student population or the age of student populations change over time, and the school committee or the school every year delineates where the most convenient and safe bus stop would be.
And
So,
they take,
in
they take
theory-
security and safety into
yes,
account.
right, I get that. But this is one specific neighborhood, it is one street,
Yeah.
and it's the only place these kids can get on the bus, regardless of ages. And I don't care if there's one kid or there's 30 on that school bus stop. All we need is one truck to hit one child. And that, to me, is, you've heard these people complain, and I don't understand, if you're willing to work with us, how hard is it to move the entrance? That it's safe and away from all the kids.
Could I make a comment on that, on the?
Yes.
I'd like to keep the emotionality out of it. I understand that it is an emotional issue, but in my experience, professional truck drivers tend to be a lot more cautious than someone who's 15 minutes late for work and has to speed down the road to get to the, the office building. It's just, that's just the way it is. So.
Well, let's leave that one on the table for the moment, because I think it might help us a bit to go through the list of things, of major items that appeared in the proposal that was sent around. The first was a definition of what the use could be that excluded some amount of what we would call distribution center kind of activity. Now, you can talk about the degree to which that's complete, but it certainly was more than there was there before. The second piece is the terminology, very much strengthened by Anita's comments, I think. I should probably look at those hard, that make it clear that the responsibility for whatever limitation factors might be put in place are the responsibility of everybody, the owners, the tenants, everybody. And I think you.
Can I comment
Yes,
on
please
that?
do.
The agreement as the draft, as council will attest to,
Right.
is binding on successes and assigns. It would be recorded. It would
Right.
run with the land. Your permit would run with the land too. and
Right.
the conditions on that would be there. So to say it's not binding on future operators or owners of the site, I think is a misstatement.
No, you're correct. You're correct in what you say there. It is binding and it is recorded. But you can see what the fears are.
So-
And if additional language would help some of that, it's certainly worth considering.
And we are absolutely willing to consider having those discussions.
Okay. The third thing, and I think this is something that's just come up in the last couple of days, is the notion of real-time traffic monitoring. Now, we in Chelmsford have some amount of, secondhand experience with that because they're applying that at the asphalt plant over in Westford. And it works well enough to keep this darned asphalt trucks coming through Chelmsford instead of going through Westford. So it must have some bite to it. And I understand the bite is related in part to the potential penalties were it to not be adhered to.
Yeah, we had some discussion internally on that issue and are looking at systems to monitor both on a real-time, day-to-day basis, but
Yeah.
also to provide historical data on that, so
Right.
that would be in place.
Right. The fourth one that's also very new, I mean, it's just come up in the last couple of days, was the notion of work on sidewalks. Now, again, before we open it up to everybody, I want to make sure that I understood here that this could in fact be done within the existing right-of-way. Without.
Our analysis to date indicates that. That's why we'd want to work with your engineering department, but if you look behind him, I don't know if you could.
Yeah, I'm looking. It's in there somewhere.
I can't find it.
But the red line behind you shows the, you may have to cross the street at appropriate locations, but with crosswalks and appropriate notifications. But our initial and fairly, I think we've looked at it pretty extensively in the last couple of weeks. We feel confident that we could make it work within the existing right.
Okay, and if I understand that correctly, that might involve some minor adjustments to the curves and such, which would reduce the abruptness of curves and improve sight lines to some degree.
And that's the comment that we would have to work with the engineering department.
Right, okay. So these are the things that are on the table for potential ways to mitigate. And I understand also that, let's see, the current proposal has cut the number of bays in half. Now, that number of bays by itself doesn't necessarily limit the trucks.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have a very heavily used bay, but it's in the right direction.
The number of bays which was brought up at this board at one time was 25.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now. And I would venture to say, while the building may be larger than the other project being discussed on a ratio basis, the ratio of bays to size is substantially less here than there.
Okay. So I think I've summarized what's in that document. Is there any other points in there that I've missed that ought to be covered? Just so that we have that in mind as we continue deliberations. Further commentary? Before, yeah?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Has there been any clarity?
Yeah, Mike.
I believe one of the last meetings, you said that there was a potential tenant. Has there been any clarity on who that may be or what type of business?
There are ongoing discussions, but we do not have a tenant
Nothing.
that to announce at this point.
Thank you.
Okay.
What was the number of, with 25 bays, what are you anticipating for truck trips per day now?
The number that we're looking at is 40 trips, which would be, that's an in and out, so that's 80 vehicles or
80.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that
Not
substantiates
trips,
that.
40
that
trips, but
says
a trip
that
is in
could
and
be,
out.
there's no data behind that. It's just a guess.
Yeah, and that, by the way,
that's just based on the ITE, so.
that's also a field to be considered and filled in. That's in the draft condition set that was presented, and that may be something we want to talk about a little bit.
This is still a large building. It abuts neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in there for soundproofing, nothing mentioned about hours of operation. I mean, this is going to significantly, there's no reduction in the size, no
Now that's
significant setback accommodation to those neighbors.
That's one other point that has not been discussed yet would be any kinds. One other thing that's in those conditions is a right turn only out of the driveway. Now that, of course, the question of how do you enforce comes up, but with the real-time traffic monitoring system, it gets a lot easier.
Then let's put a fine in there for each one that doesn't turn
Well,
right.
yeah,
turn right.
How
much would they be
there would
willing
be
to
something
bill?
of that
On
sort.
the right turn only, we think through a geometric design, we could control that.
Okay.
But on hours of operation, in terms of overnight operations,
Yeah.
we're willing to work with the town on that. And
Okay.
so again, we're looking for the dialogue to address. We've identified all of the issues.
Yeah.
The public process has identified them. We have ideas to address each and every one of them. We just need the feedback and the opportunity to have that discussion.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The two entrances you have, Do you have a real issue with tightening them up and getting them away from McFarland Road? In other words, not have it right in front of McFarland, but bring it closer in?
We'd have to talk to the engineer on that, but we can raise that as an issue.
Yeah, that might be a discussion well worth having.
My recommendation, this is a very large building, and it looks like a warehouse. We need a building in here that looks and fits that neighborhood.
Okay.
It needs to be, it's large, it needs to be further back from the neighbors, and it needs to be running 9 to 5, right? That's, like, people live there.
No, I understand that. We've been sensitive to that. We do have a rendering that was in the prior hearing that showed the street vista of that building, and with the additional landscaping in the existing vegetation there, I suggest you look at that. You would be surprised, you barely see the building.
So currently, the Mercury building is set down, right? There's an elevation in the front specifically designed when that came up, so we didn't see the building. And also, the building, kind of blends into the background. Particularly, in the summer, you barely see it when you drive by. That was all done for a reason. This is, I'm even concerned about, like, the color of this sticking out and stuff like that. I think that all needs to be I'd like to see this. And I know you've done, other buildings that have fit into other areas that are quite nice. That's, I think, what should be proposed, and that's what I'd like to see in front of the planning board, quite frankly.
Okay, thanks. Nancy, did you have anything you wanted to say? She's finding the mute button.
Nancy has left.
Yeah, maybe she's having dinner.
She's on, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Could I make a comment? This is the type of feedback we're desiring to get.
Yeah.
And I think we can, based upon what we've heard from the residents, and now we're hearing from the board, I think we can address these issues, so.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open up the public hearing portion of this at this point, but I want to ask everybody to be very, very careful about how much they say. We've heard a lot of arguments. We've heard a great deal about traffic. I doubt there's very much you can say about traffic that we haven't already heard. If you do have something that we haven't already heard, of course, we're interested in hearing it. Similarly, but less forcefully perhaps, with some of the other characteristics of this. So if there are quick comments that can be made that will add to our knowledge base, please go ahead and, hi, Chris.
Hi. Chris LaValle, Precinct 10, Town Meeting Rep, 10 Edgewood Street.
Yep.
Unfortunately, this probably won't be quick, but all of it will be new information based on all of the new documentation that was submitted by the proponents.
Yeah, but,
none of it will be repeated.
All right.
So, again, because your comments earlier were a little bit generalized, if I might cover something more specific in here that's related to some of the stuff, I apologize. So while some of the concerns of the residents seem to have been addressed on the surface, others have not been. One thing that has not been addressed is the traffic study of the worst case scenario of the code 155. The other warehouse project provided that detailed information to the planning board as a worst case scenario so that you could see what we may be up against, especially since we still don't know who the tenant's going to be. I would ask again that the planning board do their due diligence and get that worst case scenario.
Yeah.
To address some of the new material presented, the additional traffic study conclusions, while the additional passenger car traffic was shown to have no significant impact, that's not really what is concerning to us. The concern is the trucks.
Right.
And the traffic study says, quote, all truck traffic will exit the site to the west via Riverneck Road. So in that traffic study, no margin of error was provided. Obviously, 100% of the trucks they're estimating will go right onto Riverneck Road and not left. Again, maybe the real-time traffic monitor will address that. But if they're so sure, we should have a per-truck penalty for any left-hand turns.
Yeah.
Now, while that takes care of trucks coming out, it doesn't address the trucks coming in. The map applications still can point people in that direction, and the real-time traffic monitoring would not catch those, because you wouldn't know if it's a truck going into this property or elsewhere. I also find it interesting that the truck entrance is the easternmost driveway for this property. If a truck misses that turn, they're going straight towards Carlisle, and there's no place to turn around. All it takes is one driver not paying attention, mapping error, something like that, and they miss the turn. Then the letter from the engineering company saying that the reduced loading docks means a reduced truck trips by half. In his letter, he clearly admits that there's no industry data to support a reduction in truck trips based on the reduction in loading docks. He says that. Yet he says that there will be a reduction in truck traffic based on the loading docks. There's no evidence to support this claim that it will be reduced by half, as he says, and in fact, it's based on a faulty premise. The premise is that the facility is controlled, the throughput of the facility is controlled solely by the trucks. It's not. If a logical company were to come in there and you reduce the truck trips in half, you obviously want to make your money back, so you increase the efficiency in the plant or in the warehouse by increasing automation or increasing your throughput somehow. So just because you're reducing the loading docks does not mean that it's a steady throughput. So the fact that that assumption is made is faulty. In addition to that, the developers have not reduced the trailer storage. So the fact that the trailer storage hasn't been reduced proportional to the loading docks indicates that they're going to be storing just as many trucks, and the throughput is likely going to be not reduced by the loading docks. Again, as we learned early on in the process, the loading docks is only one of the many factors that go into the traffic reports and the impact. The use restriction condition. This offers zero protection for the town. As it states, any tenant who solely operates for the purpose of last mile, high volume, direct to personal deliveries. Just as an example, Amazon does not solely operate for that purpose. They operate for a number of different purposes. So they wouldn't be excluded from that use.
So you're suggesting if solely were primarily, you'd get a different answer?
Solely needs to be removed out of there.
It needs
in
to be
order protect the
stricken
town.
out completely.
There can be no use of that, whether it's solely, whether it's secondary, based on the size of that building. You've been very cautious to date, and it's at times skeptical, applying scrutiny to my proposed zoning amendments. So I would ask that you apply the same scrutiny to that proposal as well. On the traffic and mitigation conditions, on number 1, they estimate that 100% of the trip estimates in the traffic study. Why did they select the 10% overage? Why not 5%? And why do we have to wait till it's over? Why not have some monitoring program real time that gets trends up to maybe 80%? And at that point, you get a flag to bring it back down. In addition, they say that the estimates from the traffic study, yet in the traffic engineer's letter, they said 50%. They're trying to have it both ways. So they're saying that the traffic is going to be reduced by 50%, but yet in their limits, they're sticking with the original traffic numbers. So that's given them a really big buffer to work with. In none of these mitigation conditions are stated any penalties. So if they're so sure about the limits, they need to state voluntary penalties for these as well. Number 7, if they're confident that signs are going to work, again, they need penalties included in that. On number 10, a break room with fridge and microwave does not really reduce traffic for lunch. A cafeteria or food truck might, a little bit. Telecommuting and flex work schedule being offered. I question how effective that's going to be in a warehouse. I'm not sure people can do too much remote work loading trucks. Number 11, the average daily number should, based on their estimates, be 50% of the traffic study numbers. Tractor trailers may be included in this definition, but large, heavy box trucks are not. So those should be included as well. They're just as damaging to the roads, and those should be included. The whole condition and enforcement is reactive and places the burden on the town to police it and notify the company. This should be proactive with the burden of policing and notification on the company. Active monitoring program, like you mentioned, with weekly or monthly reporting to the town. There should be proactive measures implemented by the company and reported to the town when the trending indicates that it's getting too close to the limits. And there should be immediate financial penalties per truck per day over the threshold. In the additional proposed site plan condition, number 12, additional loading docks needed, then request to the planning board saying no significant impacts from the increase. If the engineers and applicant have used the argument that a 50% reduction in loading docks would mean a 50% reduction in impact, then they have to use the same logic that any increase in loading docks would be a proportional impact to the town. So they can't assume that just because they said there's going to be no impact to the town. Number 16, no parking. That should also include no standing, because construction vehicles on Riverneck Road, they may not be parking, but they could be standing if waiting for the traffic to clear. On number 24, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays, that's dangerous for the school buses and kids. They need to work around the school bus hours for that area. 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. Saturday hours of construction, that is awfully early in that residential area. I think 7 a.m. is way too early. They should shift those hours later. In my request to the planning board, I was in that vicinity the other day, going west on Riverneck and then onto Billerica Road westbound. My request to you is the traffic committee in town. My request is that you request a traffic study be done, or actually a demonstration at that intersection. They did one recently in Vinyl Square with the police department and fire department, and it was pretty effective in showing how the trucks can move around. What I noticed when I was heading west on Billerica Road, or west on Riverneck, and then continuing on to Billerica Road westbound, if you're in that middle lane, in order to get across, you kind of have to move to the right a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to hit the traffic coming the other way. If you move to the right a little bit, you're awfully close to the cars that are taking a right onto Golden Cove Road. Imagine if that was a truck having to sweep out. So I'm not saying that intersection was designed poorly, but it might be worth an actual demonstration with the traffic committee to see what the impact really would be of more trucks in that intersection. So I'd request that the planning board make a request of the traffic committee to do that demonstration, to see what it would be. And then one final question for the planning board. Looking at the initial submission form and cover letter, they indicate that the property is mostly in IA, but some in RB. I didn't notice that until this week when I was looking at some of the documentation. Based on the plans, it looks like part of the warehouse and the major exit route around the building for the trucks is in the RB zone. how does that impact the legitimacy of this project if some of that industrial use is in the RB zone? And that's a question I have no idea, but it'd be interesting to find out.
Okay.
I'll submit these
Yeah,
details,
please
because I
submit
know
it
it's a
and
lot.
get
I'll
it to
submit it
us
by
and-
email to you, but I did want to present this tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Okay. Let's see, again, please, keep it to new information and new points if you can.
Joel Luna, 10 Carter Drive, and I brought along the letter, so
Yeah, oh, you got the letters, yeah, that's good.
I emailed them as well.
Yeah, I've seen them.
One of the things that I don't know that we've actually discussed is that this particular location in the overlay is the only site that where access to the site is not actually also in the overlay. So everywhere else in the overlay, like along Billerica Road and so forth, access to those and out are also along Billerica Road, all within that district. But in this area, the access is through the residential neighborhood. And the reason I bring that up is because I think that's an important consideration as to why a lot of these issues are things that we want to take seriously. You are taking them seriously. I just wanted to point out that when you're considering this as a special permit, there is something unique about this location as opposed to other locations in the district. I won't mention the first one because Chris LaValle hit it very well. The second one is that it's my recommendation that you use the use definitions from the ITE definitions. Those are standard accepted definitions of use, and I think those would be definitions that you would want to use. And I also think that you potentially would want to use more than one. And there are actually, and I identified this in the beginning, but there are two major traffic issues that we want to keep in mind. The first and primary one, I think, is the trucks on Riverneck Road. That's number one. But number two is total traffic as it affects Golden Cove, in particular, the Golden Cove 129 and the Golden Cove 110. Now, the applicant has addressed, in their conditions, has addressed both of those, but I wanted to make sure the board kept in mind that you have two traffic issues and that the use, one use will drive one traffic issue and another use will drive another traffic issue. So for example, the warehouse use that they proposed originally, that's one of the big truck drivers, but it's like a parcel hub warehouse use is actually going to drive a total traffic. And so I just ask you to look at those when you're considering what kinds of traffic things you want to mitigate. One of the main things that I thought would be really good, and we did this on the ZBA, was that you form a subgroup. So you have one or two planning board members, and you have some residents, and potentially the applicant as well, and just hash out in a smaller group some of these things. And I think particularly the truck limit would be a really good way to do that, so that you can hear from the residents what kinds of levels would they feel would be okay, what kinds of levels would they find not great but they're willing to live with, and what levels would they just totally find unacceptable. And I think that would be a really good way to help the board get to what they think might be a good limit number. I think also it has been mentioned the hours of operation restriction. I think that would be really important, particularly for what's happening outside of the building. I mean, whatever's happening inside of the building likely is not creating a lot of noise, but what's happening outside of the building in terms of coupling and decoupling and so forth and so on would be definitely good things to consider as well. One of the things that I think that we haven't, until tonight I've actually heard, is that I do think that you do want to reduce the building footprint. Now, in the application, there's a lot of talk about square footage, that's gross floor area, and they're comparing the existing buildings to this new structure. The existing buildings were two-story, and so their footprint is actually half of, when you add up the square footage, it's actually half of that because you're counting both floors. So if you take into consideration the footprint and the footprint of what's proposed there, what is there now is actually about 40%. It's less than 40% of what's being proposed for there. And when you consider that part of what you're considering in the special permit is what kind of impact is this going to have on the neighborhood, on the neighborhood character, then I think that's something that you want to seriously look at. And when I was on the ZBA, one of the early things I remember was constantly in discussion was Kensington. Kensington, large, multifamily thing, 40B on 110, I think it's, but the concern was that they didn't realize how big it was until it was actually there. And they realized that was a mistake. And so then after that, we always asked for like 3D rendering, so forth and so on, so that we wouldn't have another Kensington. I think that's what we have here. What is proposed is essentially a giant Kensington in this neighborhood. And I think you really want to reduce it down to something that is closer to what is there now than what is being proposed. And then the last thing is, and this is completely new. I'm sure you have not thought about this at all. And that is that the area behind the property, actually abutting right up to the back of the property, is both estimated and priority habitat. And I know that because my wife and I, and Linda Jones sitting back there with her husband Marty, did the tracking of the wood turtles that gave that data to Natural Heritage, and they essentially created these estimated and priority habitat maps because of that. So we're very concerned about that. And what we would ask is that the applicant file with Natural Heritage, and that if you do condition this, you condition that they comply with whatever restrictions Natural Heritage puts on. There are two different things that are involved here. One is estimated habitat, and there's also priority habitat. They are different. They overlap a lot, but they're different because some of it, the estimated habitat's under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. So it's not strictly, though, a Conservation Commission problem because you also have priority habitat. That's in the upland, that's outside of the wetlands. That's not something that's in their jurisdiction. That's under your jurisdiction. And so that's something then that asks that you have them comply with whatever Natural Heritage would have them to do in terms of like fencing, preventing turtles from getting onto the property, all of that sort of thing. So those are the things that I ask you to consider. I do appreciate the applicant sort of helping to bring some clarity, I think, to what are the issues. And so I think now if the board could take actions to help actually involve the residents in determining what those should be, I think that would definitely be a good step forward. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking about. Okay.
Good evening. Robert Delaney, 22 McFarland Road, Chelmsford. Joel presented something really good about the heritage, national heritage. But again, the building itself, square footage is all the way over to the far northwest corner. It's abutting directly to the Chelmsford Water District. You have two wells over there. We got contaminated back in 2000 with stuff from Jack-a-Lemmock, which is up further to the north. That's because the flow comes when they run the wells. They draw the water in from further away. It took years before it settled in, got to the wells. It became a problem and issue to the Chelmsford Water District. You have about 40% of your water supplies out of the Riverneck treatment plant. There are two wells that are there that give you about 800 gallons a minute. Those wells could become problematic based on not knowing what we're going to be storing in these buildings, what we're going to put on these trucks that are going to sit outside, and who's going to watch over that. I know the Water District put forth a letter of put monitoring wells in for the time being, ahead of time, so you know what they're dealing with beforehand. I'm more concerned about them selling it and having a management company come in and what kind of controls are going to be set and left in place for that. Again, you're talking about 40% of your water supply for the Chelmsford Water District. The other thing that came to light, they did a good job putting their study together, but they did their data on August 9th for the traffic for cars going up towards Carlisle. Well, August 9th doesn't take into consideration that we have 10 months worth of kids with school buses. We have two cemeteries there. We have Riverneck, we have the one at Pine Hill, and we have the other one at St. Joe's. So nothing's been considered about anything going traffic in and out of there. Again, set in a residential area, but it was nice that they put the fact that they were coming out of the entrance and going towards Golden Cove. Again, nothing mentioned about entrance. Those truck drivers are smart, and they won't drive fast. But they will be smart enough to know that we're not gonna get bottled up at Golden Cove to get to the facility. They're gonna come in the other way. And they're gonna come down Riverneck Road, and they're gonna go the full length, which is a mile and 1.2 miles, as opposed to the 0.7 coming out to Riverneck Road. It's gonna take them minutes to do that, as opposed to what they're gonna wait for in the bottle up to try to get in to Riverneck Road by coming through Golden Cove at 9 o'clock in the morning. You can sit there and you can go 8:45, and you can come out of at Golden Cove, and you can go all the way down to the bike path and see the traffic backed up trying to get up to get to 129. So I'd like you to give consideration to that, along with the fact that it is going to be an adverse thing for everybody in that neighborhood, and children is busing. So a lot of safety factors and a lot of things to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes,
just make
please.
a comment?
Go ahead.
As I think we indicated at an early meeting, we would welcome the opportunity to have a subcommittee of the board as well as concerned citizens to discuss this, if that's the will of the board.
Okay. So you would be in favor of that? That's interesting. Okay. In any new material? See one person walking up.
Good morning, good afternoon, evening board. John Byron again. So when I was working, I worked for a Pepsi-Cola company, and it's up in there. And when I first started there, it was the building was almost 2 acres, and now it's I don't know, 250 feet by 40 some odd feet. We have a 40-foot roof in one building, and the rest of them are 20 feet. And we have 22 we have 22 tractors and almost 30 some odd trailers. And in an average day, it's we could have almost 100 and some odd trucks coming out with either picking up something or somebody else coming in and unloading stuff. But our own trucks, some of them do almost 80 loads a day, in and out for 3 or 4 loads. They might go to Manchester, they might go to Providence, or they might go up to Conway or Maine, but they come in and out all day long. And one of the problems we had, we were shipping products to California, Texas, and so forth. A couple of years ago, we had a snowstorm. And the guy came up with Texas to pick up a load, and it started to snow out. And as you look, we have 2 driveways that go up the road, and it was just about ship time, and he was going out. He couldn't make it up the hill. So about an hour and a half later, by plowing and everything else, we finally got him up with his summer tires on, not winter ones, and they had to shut the production down because the people coming into work couldn't come in, and the people who going home couldn't go home. So it's, and not only that, but you have these other guys, all they do is drive with their Jake brake, you know, it's gonna hear that all night if you have night traffic. Yeah. And also too, the roads, you know, you got a 53-foot trailer and a 10-foot tractor in front of it, and you know, you're over 60 feet long, and if you're loaded, like for the soda wise, you're at the max at 80,000 pounds. So just the wear and tear, and not only that, but we have other ones that come in who drop a cardboard, nitrogen and CO2, and we have sugar, and we haul away at least 5 tankers loads of wastewater a day. Yeah. So it's a lot of traffic back and forth. And it is inside a residential area. The reason why they built an apartment next door and another one, they've been there since 1966, and everybody else bought in the condos in 1990 and 2000. So they had no say about the trucking. But,
Gotcha.
you know, but all our drivers, no Jake brakes, no horns. So it's a lot of, and also the building, if I get this right, it's 40 feet tall, Alan?
Taller than that.
Okay, could you,
43
suppose you
feet
could
tall.
wrap it
43.
up pretty quickly, because,
Can I wrap it up?
yeah, could you wrap it up?
Yeah, how tall is the building? 40, right?
43, I think.
Is that from the from the ground or from the foundation up? Because when you have a loading dock, you need 4 feet
Per the height
for the loading
definition of
dock
the zoning
for a
bylaw.
truck to back in. So these loading docks aren't gonna be covered, if I'm correct, so they're gonna back in. So are we talking from the ground going up 44 feet?
It's an average based upon the zoning bylaw definition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you very much. Okay, looking out around here. All right, I think we're kind of done with public input for tonight. I think, oh,
One more.
How about Zoom? Is this new
We've got-
material?
We've got folks on Zoom, too.
Okay, so we have people on Zoom as well. Again, I'm going to
We've got
ask
one
you
more person
to
walking up.
keep it to new material, if you could. Thank you.
I beg the indulgence of the board, but I have some information that I would like to share. Have any of you ever observed what I call the morning and afternoon rush hour of delivery trucks at the intersection of Route 129 and the Chelmsford Forum, which requires a traffic officer to control Route 129 east and westbound traffic for approximately a half hour every morning and every afternoon? You can park in the parking lot of the restaurant, the Mexican restaurant, and observe it. It is something to behold. And I never realized it until the pandemic, when I started traveling that way.
Yeah,
What will happen when the Riverneck Road Route 129 rush hour occurs? Also requiring a traffic officer to direct traffic east and westbound on Route 129. An added concern is that the Riverneck Road Route 129 intersection is also at the entrance of Pine Ridge Cemetery. So there will be funerals to consider.
Yeah, they always have right-of-way anyway, by the way.
In addition, not just Golden Cove Road, turning onto Golden Cove Road, what you may not realize, someone mentioned, but Golden Cove crosses over to Route 110, and the traffic in the morning and the afternoon backs up and continues on to Stedman Street north, beyond Stedman Street to the Dalton Road intersection and beyond.
All right, this,
One
if I
other
could,
thing.
if you could keep it quick, I mean, some
I'm
of this is
winding it up.
speculative, and I don't think we should
I
hear
asked for your
too far.
indulgence. I'm about to finish. I just want to conclude by saying, just over 10 years ago, in 2011, Chelmsford was declared the 28th best place to live in the United States by Money Magazine.
Yeah, I remember.
And finally, the motto of this town is, "Let the children guard what the sires have won." You're not just making a decision for a couple of neighborhoods on the east side of Chelmsford that most people don't even travel through. You're making a decision for the entire town, and the precedent that you will be setting with this decision may not be one you want to live with in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay,
Alan on Zoom.
okay.
Hand up.
Bring him up.
Hello, my name is Alan Kolf, 23 McFarland Road. It says I cannot start my video because the moderator has disabled it, so I apologize for that. I would like to highlight that we're being told that the developer is working with us, but we only get vague hand-waving arguments and dismissals from him. Things like, well, children will age out through the bus stops or it'll work out. My children are 5, 7, and 9. The neighbor's child is 3 and in utero. The kids will be here for a long time. The side roads are dead end and buses cannot turn around in them. So these are significant problems. On my right arm, I have a brace from a car crash I had a year and a half ago just down the road. And I was hit head on by a sedan. I was in my pickup truck with my wife and my children, and because there's a granite curb and a steel rail and no sidewalk and safety and telephone poles right up against the road, there is no margin for error. On a major road, a highway, or even a state road, these are more taken care of. There is no margin for error, and you don't know terror until you see the face of death of you and your children through traffic accidents. I would like to point out the neighborhood residents have been here for 10, 20, 30 years. I've been here for 12 years myself, and a 250,000 square foot warehouse does not fit in with this neighborhood. It is not what we signed up for, and it is a significant shift. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think we have one more.
Let's see.
John Gamelli.
Okay, again, please keep it brief and to new material if you can.
Yeah, hi, I'm not sure if you can hear me. My question is about the right turn. I'm at 211 Riverneck. So the road that you propose these trucks are exiting on, coming right onto Riverneck, I'll be that first house on the right-hand side, and I'm not sure how that mitigates sound pollution or traffic congestion going to the right, which is where most of the residences are. So I would like that to be addressed. I'm not sure where this right turn thing came from, but there's obviously quite a few residences and children that live on that part of the street as well. What was the other point? That's it for now, but a lot of other good points were made, and I really do ask that you consider the truck traffic. Oh, the sidewalk situation. They're saying they gotta put sidewalks in. Not sure where those are gonna go. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the width of Riverneck Road. It's pretty narrow. So I'd like that addressed as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and on the sidewalks, they've been looking at the engineering drawings on that one. Now, whether it ultimately turns out to be completely feasible is hard to say, but it looks pretty good from the report that I got. It's, I believe, a 50-foot right-of-way up there?
That's what they've indicated.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Okay, I think at this point, we're going to stop the public input for the moment. That would be my suggestion.
Should we just
If
close
somebody would
public-
suggest.
I mean, this has been going on for a long time. Should we close public input and
I'm not sure we necessarily want to, I mean, I'm perfectly happy to
and
close it,
take a
but I'm not
vote
sure
or
we
do a
want to.
straw
but,
vote
but
or
we want
find
to-
out where we are? Because there seems to be a big difference from kind of,
Well, we did get some new information
Yeah.
about sidewalks tonight.
But I think the most important thing for us to do right now is talk about the next step. There's clearly some negotiation that's focusing in on the proposal that was sent to us.
Mike.
Yeah.
I think the proponent's been in for many months. We've been sitting here listening for
Right,
a long
we've
time.
heard them all, yeah.
Why don't we be honest with them, do a straw poll, and then allow them to decide where that vote is? Because we don't know where everyone's vote is.
Okay.
But we've had a lot of, I mean, you can probably anticipate where certain votes are going. And if they don't have the votes for positive, they should decide if they want to continue to come forward. Or we can close the public hearing and then take the vote, and then it's done. So I'm suggesting that we at least be honest with them. And I am not in favor of continuing this meeting unless we do
No,
a straw
I am-
poll,
I-
or we know where every single member of this board is feeling.
Okay, and my point is that we now have a document in front of us.
I know, but I don't want to negotiate a document.
No, I
if
don't
it's not
want to
gonna go
negotiate it
forward.
right now necessarily, but I think we need to talk about the next step.
If it doesn't have the votes, then why waste the
Well-
time doing the document?
That's a fair point. On the other hand, the vote may depend on what exactly gets tweaked in the document.
Well, why don't we find out?
Yeah,
I mean,
we
that's-
could. I mean,
Let's do a
with the
straw poll.
chairman,
Does
if
it-
we take
where do we
a
stand
straw
right now?
poll, it's based on a sort of a generic sense of what this document says. And, you know,
No, it's
we
based,
are
it's,
each
it's
left to
based
our
on,
assumptions.
it's based on the facts that we've had in front of us.
The facts
For 6 months
and,
now.
but we have to work into that, into that calculus, the notion of what limitations would be placed on there by the conditions. If we think we know enough about what those conditions would look like, then I think we can go ahead and have a straw poll. And I think what I would suggest is that we ask the proponent whether they would like to see us do something like that right now.
Mr. Chairman, I think there are a lot of issues I think we can address. I hear what you're saying, and we've heard a lot tonight. We've been trying to get some feedback from the board. I think we'd like the opportunity to caucus amongst ourselves to see whether we can address some of the issues that the board has raised and some of the other people have raised.
Okay, I mean, that's a request.
Would the proponent make the building smaller? Would they put in a covenant that it's not going to be a distribution center?
Yeah.
Like, are those, these, it's not just the traffic. There's a lot here that,
We acknowledge that there's a lot, but those are
so,
just,
like,
it's not as
I'm
simple
not
as-
voting on this, but I can tell you right now, based on where it is and where, come back with a better plan. Something that works for this neighborhood. You've done it in other towns. I know you've done a great job in other towns. I think you can come up with something better that would be more appropriate here. Would you be willing to do that?
Members of the board, Mike Cantalupa from the Davis Companies. In all honesty, I just want to reinforce what Bob said. We gave you a document, and we've got a lot of feedback. We would consider a lot of the things that were actually addressed here. You know, I was sitting there, I didn't really ask you, where would you want the road, right? I think we've got flexibility in terms of where the entrance could be. We have some flexibility in a variety of things that you've brought up tonight. So I'd like the opportunity to go away, come back to you and say, this is what we heard, and this is what we think we can do, right? Please give us that opportunity to do that. I promise we'll give you a very detailed response in the next meeting, and hopefully we can get much closer to closure and the possibility of doing this.
Okay. That's fair. Okay, well, that I understand. I think it makes some sense, but I think we should probably, if we're going to go that route, we should go down the list of areas for discussion within the context of that conditions document and be pretty specific about what things we're going to be talking about. Does that make sense to you, Mike?
I think we already been talking about it. Do you,
I think we need to wait to hear what they come back with.
if I could say one thing, though, one thing that's come up since the beginning has been that bus stop. It seems like it's not a big deal, but you haven't done anything with it yet. So, you know, I think there's a little discouragement there in that case. So I definitely feel like you guys deserve a chance to make your changes, but simple things like that make a difference to people.
Absolutely, but we don't know where the population, the students are. We'll deal with the school committee and we'll.
It doesn't even matter, to be honest,
We'd be more
population.
than happy to locate that in the most convenient and safe
Yeah.
place.
Yep, that's
And
all.
we're just looking for feedback as to where that is.
Granted, so one of your bullet points should be, we're gonna move that bus stop to a safe place so they know that their kids will be safe, and I
Well, you
think
can move
that's
the bus stop or the entrance, because you can't move the bus stop.
whatever
Well,
it
you can
is.
negotiate.
Can't move the bus stop.
That's for them to do.
Yeah.
I'm just stating,
Okay.
that's been brought up, that's just a tiny thing, but it shows that it's come up every single time. It's just a little thing that nothing's been said or done about, so.
We are representing the
Well, that's,
people.
yeah, I get it, I'm just, a little bit of a comment, that's all.
Okay. All right. Well,
Do you guys feel you have enough right now to go back and do what you need to do?
I assume our side has been taking copious notes.
yeah.
So I think we do.
What has changed from our perspective? And what has changed in 6 months since this first came out? The size of the building was the first thing we talked about, and we talked about traffic, and that this is a wrong location, that this street is it's a very tight street. So I'm trying to ask, why are we continuing this on? Because nothing has changed. The building is still the same size.
But we're not doing the same calculus. We're not
Well,
making a
but then-
calculus that the size translates to impact.
And you're putting in provisions for after the fact of traffic.
Right.
Well, that doesn't work. It's, how do you control that? And you may come up with the perfect plan, but then that's left for the police department and left for someone else to chase down the road, and the neighbors have an issue. But I mean, there's one thing that I want to be clear with the neighbors too. Some of these streets they're sitting in the IA, and I don't know every resident if they know that. So that's a complication when we're doing our zoning conflict, Deirdre, that we brought up, this is a perfect example. We got neighbors that are coming on the TV and presenting in front of us, and they're living in the IA district. There's residential sitting in there. So they don't, I mean, that's going to be a complication for down the road. That's not for you, right, to deal with.
And I appreciate that comment, but I also think that when you ask the question, what has changed? We've tried to make changes to the program that we believe is going to result in less impact. You may not believe that, and you may feel that we can't condition it to that point. I think we can. And from years of experience, there's ways to do it and to enforce it and to provide the protection the town needs. Ultimately, you may decide that that's not doable for any other reasons. But what we'd like is the opportunity to digest what we heard tonight, and we may come back and say, we can do the math as well as anyone else and figure out where people stand. And we've heard a lot tonight, and we'd like to be able to come back. But I will submit to you that this property is zoned for this type of use, and that zoning is not going away. So be it us or someone else or a combination, it's going to be an issue that's going to have to be confronted.
Oh, no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And when this project first came, I thought of if we could ever have an extension of Apollo Drive or right off of 129 where you have that fire access, which we looked at early on, right? You looked at that, would be perfect. So you stay away from Riverneck Road, you come across the street. Perfect.
And I can
That
assure
can't
you
be done.
still looking at all those
Well,
issues.
that's, because it's almost like this was an extension across Riverneck Road
It should have
at the
been
time when they were doing the IA.
It should have, and they've been talking
expanded.
about that since I worked at Mercury 20 years ago.
What, they're going across, or that
Yeah,
extension?
opening that fire exit, but it hasn't happened, and
But-
there's enough private property there that.
I will submit that what you've raised, what everyone's raised, in combination with what we're doing in the background, and those are the types of issues that we're looking at, we may be able to come back and placate your fears on some of those things.
Okay.
Fine, we'll be here.
May I suggest then that we do precisely what you're suggesting? You give it a thought, but let's try to be specific about the things in the proposed condition document and the associated things.
Sidewalks.
That we're interested in. We got the sidewalks.
That's sidewalks. Safety is the biggest
Safety.
issue.
9 to
We
5,
have-
smaller building.
And you've given the beginning of a very interesting proposal there, which, if I understand it, would also have some other benefits in the layout of the road, the usability of the road, the sightlines
Building is a
and what have you.
warehouse, it's huge, it needs to, it needs to fit the neighborhood, it doesn't fit the neighborhood.
Sidewalks would benefit the town.
That they would.
But I like something that would,
They've heard what we've said,
Yeah,
so
and there's
let's give them the opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to get the topics. I don't want to argue the topics. I want to say what the topics are. Sidewalks?
I'd like to request if the number of bays could come down more. And also if the size of the building could be reduced.
Okay. Hours of operation, the turnout and the penalties situation, and what exactly would happen if there was more truck traffic than was expected, and how, with the traffic monitoring systems are a really great start to get the data, but then there needs to be some thought about what to do with that data. The strengthening up on some of the conditions in the first section, as Anita pointed out, be well worth
I don't know
doing,
if they
and
ever
I
got
think
a
you've
draft
got,
of
you've
it.
got the materials, huh?
I don't think they ever got a draft of it.
They don't have a draft?
Of what I sent? No.
I don't know. Did we ever send them a? We should. Let's do that. I was under the impression that they'd gotten that.
I made some comments.
Okay, any other topic? I think that covers it pretty well.
Mike, there
Yeah.
was some discussion about a cap, or some.
Oh, yes, a
some
cap.
calculations
Yeah.
that were referenced.
Yeah,
that would
you know, an
reduce-
actual number of trucks per trips per day. Obviously, this site is, if it were built in any combination, is going to have some truck traffic. The question is how much, what is the limit, and again, how would that limit be enforced? And having the data is a real good study. Hard to enforce something without the data, but having the data with this traffic monitoring, I think is a really good start.
So are we going to ask them to redo the traffic study with the code?
No, not to
55?
renew the traffic study. I think we know, I mean, the traffic study is secondary to a
But if
limit
you're
that
gonna
says
have-
you can only have so many.
But if you're basing your limit off a number that was not correct, because they didn't use the appropriate number.
That was an opinion.
Yeah, that
But
was
your peer review consultant
Yeah.
did not agree with that opinion.
Yeah. Have I missed any topics?
We have someone up here.
Yeah, well, do you have, well, go ahead and say a few words, if you would. Yeah.
Linda Jones, 242 Riverneck Road. I live on the west side. I just want to say regarding the size of the building, they say they're going to use 25 loading docks, but they're going to build 52 loading docks.
No. No.
That's what it said in that letter. They're going to build 52 and you only use 25 at a time.
I think there's been changes since.
They reduced
They
to
reduced
25.
it. They reduced it.
25 is the number.
So if they're building 25, why don't they decrease the size of the building to accommodate only 25?
It depends on the
Storage.
use of the building.
And how automated they are.
And, you know, it could be a storage space where nothing ever happens. I mean, not that anybody does that anymore, but in theory, it's possible.
Or it could be, as Mr. LaValle said,
Right.
it could be automated and still have the same amount of traffic.
Yeah, or
Right,
it could be
with
automated and have the same.
right.
There are a lot of angles to
Okay,
this.
so they're only building 25?
Board sections
That
could be
letter
built
was
out as office space.
Dated after
Yep.
Yeah.
the
Mixed use.
submission. It was dated September 1st.
Yeah.
It said they were going to only use 25, but there would be 52.
No, that's not what they said.
It was,
Okay.
it was said like that at first, meaning they were gonna
Yeah.
build them so they would have them in case they needed them in the future, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Yeah, there's been several developments as we've
Only
gone
be
on.
25 loading docks.
Yeah, that's what that's
Okay.
the current conversation.
Okay.
And that's
Thank you.
all it is, current conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think then,
Motion to continue?
I hate having perpetual motions to continue.
We have a
This is
date?
one I think we need.
Yeah.
Wait,
Do you have a date that,
What would be a good date for you guys?
Two meetings? Mr. Chairman, if we could go 2 meetings out to address these issues in specificity.
So what's that, the 12th?
2 meetings out, that would be
Last meeting in October.
last in October? Halloween. We can all come dressed up.
all right?
What's the date?
2 meetings would
Be
be
the 12th, right?
the 12th.
12th?
Yeah.
The 12th? Okay, that's the first meeting in
October
October.
26th is the second meeting in October.
No, 2 meetings from now. is what
Oh,
he was
would
saying.
be October 12th.
Are we piling up stuff on that meeting?
There's nothing new.
Okay.
Whatever you continue.
Then that's doable. And I'm going to say, I think we've, just as a general statement, not about any particular commentary that's gone on tonight, is we've really beat an awful lot of these subtopics to death. And I think at this point, we need to be focusing more on negotiating a potential agreement of conditions that would give some
Well,
satisfaction to
then
everybody.
shouldn't we?
Do you need a-
Do a straw poll where we
You want a motion to continue to October 12th, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
Second,
Second by Deidre.
all in favor?
Discussion.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, you got
Thank
it.
you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was big news. Sidewalks all the way
Are we done?
to 129 is a change in,
Any new business?
And I wouldn't worry too much about the traffic at the,
so I'd like to talk to them.
Center gate.
They think.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
Well, we might. Let me ask you guys down here, do we have any more topics that we ought to consider tonight?
There's nothing else on the
Before we
agenda.
pull- Yeah, what's for dinner? Okay, well, let me translate what's for dinner into the motion that he's about to make.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.